Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm JJ Flazanes, your empowerment strategist and producer. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about your inner prostitute. And you're probably wondering what I'm talking about. No, we're not talking about sex, although it could be, but not necessarily. Before I get into what we're going to be talking about today is a solo show. And I wanted to let you know that a few more solo shows are coming. I've been very health forward a lot recently, and I want to bring back some of these conversations that have been coming up in the different groups that I have, and questions and a theme that I've seen in myself as well as some of my clients, which is actually what sparked today's conversation. If you're listening to this in real time, we're in a Scorpio full moon eclipse. It's a very powerful moment for us to really look at what's underneath the surface. Scorpio is a water sign. Scorpios are passionate, but they're also usually secretive. And so we're looking at the shadow side of ourselves right now that might be coming up for you, some emotions you don't want to experience. Maybe there's some truths you've been hiding from or denying or in denial about. And that's what this full moon is asking us to do. So I thought this was a perfect topic, this inner prostitute, because again, I've been seeing it in clients as well as myself. So some of these topics that I'll be talking about come from a couple of different groups that I have. And I just want to put that out there right now for you to know that there is more out there. So if you're just listening to this podcast and you don't know all the other things that I do, if you're a super fan, I did start a diary show. It's called Releasing the Goddess Within. And if you're not a super fan, I would discourage you from going to listen to it because it's my journey. It's my audio processing of my own stuff, and it's literally just for me. So I kind of don't care if you like it or not. Really, I say that many, many times because I have to be clear and I have to be in integrity for me about the reason I'm doing it. I'm not doing it for anyone else. I'm doing it for me. And the reason why it's public is because I needed to create accountability for myself. Now, on the other side, I also have a membership group, which is a super inexpensive, very affordable way for you to get group coaching and to connect with a community, find a Rampage partner, get discounts on stuff. And we just had a really powerful conversation about parenting on Saturday. And this membership used to be called in the Inner Circle membership, but it is now called Empower You, which means Empower University. And we really do only deal with the emotional stuff. I've had to sort of separate my business into sections and just take all the business stuff into the mastermind, take all of the training into the certification, and then take some of the emotional processing and only put that in Empower You. We're also doing full moon circles and new moon circles now in Empower You also. So it's a really great way to be a part of the community. That's like the first step because it's super inexpensive. And you can find out more about that at jjflazanes.com/EU. EU, Empower You, Empower University. And so some of these topics that I'm going to be talking about over the next couple of months came from that group. And I'll put some of the podcast episodes in that group because they have their own separate podcast as well as here on the show. And it'll be a moment by moment decision what goes where. But I just wanted to let you know that we're going to be talking about things like introvert versus extrovert and forgiveness and selfish when it comes to self-care and attracting money. And if you're out of balance and about acceptance. So these are some of the topics that we're going to be covering, you and me, in a solo show format over the next couple of months. So today's show is coming out of the work of Carolyn Mace and her book called Sacred Contracts, Awakening Your Divine Potential. And I talked about this book when I was in transition with my relationship 4 years ago. And I would love to have Carolyn on the show and maybe one day I can get her. But before that and in between now and then, I will continue to share her work with you when appropriate. And this is definitely an appropriate time. This Scorpio full moon and eclipse, as well as, again, what I'm seeing in my clients and seeing in myself in terms of what we need to look at. So we all share 4 archetypes, but each of us have about 12. There are 12 major archetypes that rule your life, and there are 80 cards in this card deck. So Carolyn made an archetype card deck, and there's 80 cards in the card deck, but I don't think there's 80 archetypes because there are 6 different child archetypes, and then there are a couple blank cards in there. So maybe there's 75 or 74 different archetypes to choose from, but we all share 4. And I won't get into the other 4. I'll just list them. So child is one of them, but there's 6 different child archetypes, like wounded child, abandoned child, nature child. And then there's the saboteur card and archetype. And then there's the victim archetype, which we all have. And I really think that that's sort of the basis of my work, is to help us all pull out of the shadow side of saboteur and victim and to recognize when you're in it, because it doesn't help you grow. It helps you protect yourself. There's definitely a lighter side of it. It's contrast in law of attraction, so we need it. And it is part of our human experience and condition. But then there's the shadow side, if we get too out of balance, that we stay in, that doesn't help at all. So the last of the 4 archetypes we share are prostitute. And I'm going to read to you from the book, from the little book inside the card deck, of what prostitute says. And again, there's a light side and a shadow side. So the prostitute engages lessons in the sale or negotiation of your integrity or spirit based on fears of physical and material survival or for financial gain. It activates aspects of the unconscious related to seduction and control. Should also be understood as the selling or the selling out of talents, ideas, and any other expression of self. Core learning relates to the need to birth and refine self-esteem and self-respect. And the shadow side of the prostitute assesses all transactions only in terms of how they will profit you, not what they will cost you spiritually. And again, everyone has this archetype. So let's talk about the prostitute archetype, because it's come up, and I'll do my story, and I've got a client story. So I've got a client who has been employed by the government for a long time, and I guess has just a few years left on the contract, if you will, then they can retire. And at the same time, they want to build a business. And what has come to pass over the last couple of years of working with this client is that they have uncovered that their zone of genius is not in alignment with their work. And it's pretty obvious, actually, but when you're working for money, and I just want to, I'm not trying to shame anybody, so please understand that, but the prostitute card is that when you're working for money, you are prostituting yourself. So I'm going to go back to this. Engages lessons in the sale or negotiation of your integrity or spirit based on fears of physical and material survival for financial gain. So let's be clear. Those of you that hate your jobs, those of you that stay in jobs you don't like because you're waiting to retire, those of you that make decisions based on money first are actively in your prostitute archetype, the shadow side of your prostitute archetype. I don't have the card in front of me, so I can't read to you what the light side is, but it is about these lessons. And I guess that would be really the lesson, is that the light side invokes the lesson. But if you stay in that lesson, or if you stay in that prostitute archetype too long, and we're now out of integrity, like really out of integrity, then you're stuck in that shadow side of that every transaction is about your self-gain, like your gain, and what you're willing to give up to get that. So just think about that for a second. Where do you prostitute yourself in your life? Where do you prostitute your desires? Where do you prostitute yourself for money? Where do you prostitute yourself for love and attention? So let's go back to client, and this person knows their zone of genius is not being used in their current situation, and it's being uncovered, and then there's been some work issues, and all of a sudden, like, it all blows up. It blows up, and it's, when we're people pleasers, which that's an addiction, and that's a whole nother show. But when you're a people pleaser and you want to be liked and you think you're doing the right thing, and the conversation becomes that you're wronged, then we're looking at this situation as bad. I'm going to pause for a second because I have a friend. I want to tell another story. I have a friend from years ago. She hated her job. She only did the job because her parents and her sister wanted her to have stability and insurance. They wanted her to have life and health insurance and be protected. So she did this job she hated. And every day she hated it. And every day she told me she hated it. She was making the best of it. But ultimately, she hated it. And then one day she got fired. And she was crying and so unhappy about being fired. And I was like, awesome. I'm like, it's exactly what you wanted. And she's like, but I didn't want it. I said, yes, you did. You unconsciously on every freaking level wanted out of this job. And now that you've gotten fired, you can collect unemployment, and they gave her a severance. So now you get paid, because if she would have quit, she would have gotten none of that. Now, she didn't manipulate the situation intentionally or consciously, but she 100% gave out the vibrations of hating this job and not wanting to be there. And guess what? She attracted exactly what she wanted, which was freedom to get out. But she was crying when she called me because she felt bad about it. She felt shame. And I was like, but you wanted this. So I want to invite you to just take a really hard, honest look at the things that you attract, that you're unconscious that you want. Things that happen that you think are bad, but really, they're your push out the door. They're the reason that you get to take that next step. They are an opportunity in disguise that you wouldn't have had otherwise, but that doesn't mean that the situation isn't painful or uncomfortable. It just means you did ask for it. And one of the most powerful things you can do is really own that you've manifested negative things because they did help you. They did push you forward. They did move you beyond your stuckness. So that was, I was so happy for her, and it took her a second. And then she really, she's been kind of an entrepreneur ever since. She never considered herself a business owner, this friend of mine, and I don't know that she still does. But she had enough independent work from different people that she literally became her own boss. And I don't think she would have done that willingly. I think she wanted to, but she didn't have the confidence to go out there and claim, I'm going to start a business, because ultimately she still works for other people. She just works for a lot of other people and makes her own schedule and decides all that stuff. So back to said client. Even when you have the knowledge and information, again, it's the difference between knowing it and living it. It's a difference between acknowledging it and understanding it. This is one of my go-tos of the reasons why I'm not a fan of therapy, is because people come out of therapy, I find, very educated about their issues, but they actually haven't processed any of them, and they haven't changed any behavioral patterns, and they act the same when presented with a situation over and over again. But they sure know all the intricacies, and they can sling all those names about the narcissists and that's a whole other show I need to do at some point somewhere, because the labeling is anyway, the labeling doesn't help you, but you think it helps you because it blames somebody else, but it's part of that victim contract. So back to the prostitute. So let's go back to my client and understanding that, and we have to look at it and be honest. We have to look at, what am I afraid of? Why don't I just leave? Like I said, this job is not even one you enjoy. You don't get what you need. It's very bad communication with everybody. You're trying to make the best of a sinking ship, but it isn't ultimately what you want to be doing or how you want to be in the world. But because of the financial security piece, they stay. And I know several of you who have stayed. And I want you to know, it doesn't mean, I'm not shaming you. We all make choices based on this, and I'm going to tell you some of mine. But when you don't feel good, or when you have some kind of gnawing something going on with you, or a physical ailment because of this, be clear that you've prostituted yourself because you've decided that money or this illusion of security is more important than your thoughts, feelings, desires, or zone of genius or alignment. I want to read this again. The prostitute engages lessons in the sale or negotiation of your integrity or spirit based on fears and of physical and material survival or for financial gain. We're going to go to, should be also understood as the selling or selling out of talents, ideas, and any other expression of the self. Core learning relates to the need to birth and refine self-esteem and self-respect. Okay, now I'm going to share with you my story about that. And what I've noticed over the years is it gets less and less. I definitely have done it on bigger levels and smaller levels. Let me do a personal story and then a business story. So the first personal story is when I had an ex-boyfriend years ago. And I think I had learned this work already, but I was very, very clear that I was prostituting myself because I had been dating somebody who didn't drive, who wasn't legal and was a salsa instructor and a wonderful person, and was like a king on the dance floor. And, but in life was kind of childlike, to be quite honest. And I knew at the time that I was like on the dance floor, and when we went dancing, I was getting my needs met in certain ways that I hadn't in a long time. I was getting great sex. I was getting romance. I was getting dancing, and I was feeling very feminine. I mean, salsa dancing to me, it can heal the world. Can teach women how to follow and surrender, which most of you need because you're control freaks like me. So you have to learn how to surrender and follow. And let me tell you, it's better than sex. Literally, like when you follow somebody on the dance floor, and again, it could be in both directions. I can lead, so I'm a leader too, and I can lead a guy. Some guys like to follow also. But when you learn to surrender and let somebody else lead you, it is so freeing. It is so, physically embodies just true connection, really, because you have no control. You've completely surrendered. Well, I didn't have that in my life because I was an entrepreneur. And I was working that left brain pretty hard all the time in survival mode, trying to make money and pay my bills and move my business forward. So when I would go dancing, it was like the complete opposite. I got to surrender and release. I got to just be led. I got to be free. I got to be in flow. I got to be feminine. I got to be in my body. I got to not think. So it was so amazing that it was like a drug. And I loved it, and I got it all the time because I was dating a salsa instructor. Now, in life, however, our relationship didn't quite look as romantic and fantastical and idealistic because in life, he didn't drive. I had to go pick him up and bring him home. He didn't stay the night at the time because he lived with his mother, and so he didn't want his mother to know that he was gone, so I had to deal with that. He didn't make a lot of money, so if I wanted to go anywhere, I had to pay for it. And I recognized that I was prostituting myself for dancing. But I knew it, and I was okay with it. And there was going to be a limit on it. It wasn't going to last forever. And so I was going to enjoy the moment. And I consciously decided to continue prostituting myself for dancing and for romance and for this feeling because it gave me balance. I needed that. I needed that connection to that part of my body, to that part of my brain, to that part of my femininity. I needed the balance I wasn't getting in any other way. I didn't know how to surrender and flow and be led in this kind of way in life without the music, without a person, without the scenario. So I was aware of the prostitute card. I had learned about it before this, and I was well aware I was using it. But I was in control of it, and it wasn't leading me. And of course, there was an endpoint. All right, now let's move to business. So in business, I had an opportunity to ask a pretty famous podcaster to come on the show. But my thoughts weren't pure. I didn't do it because I wanted this person. And hopefully, if you've been following me for a while, you feel, not know, you feel, well, you know too, but you feel it, that there are a lot of topics that I choose because I am interested in them. I am passionate about them. I want to know more. I want to share more. And when it's not something that's connected to the deepest part of me, sometimes it's more like a job. So years ago, I was looking at how can I grow my audience and increase the business and reach more people. And when you're a podcaster, people listen to podcasts. So I'm like, all right, great. So maybe I can do an episode exchange with somebody else who has a similar audience. So I went to the group I had at the time, which was my 30-day manifestation challenge group. And I asked them, I said, who else do you guys listen to? What other podcasts do you listen to? And I had a bunch of people give me answers, and I saw a theme of a certain person. So I went to said person, and I had connections to get there to ask them to come on the show. Now, I don't have anywhere near the numbers they have, and so they basically were sort of asking me for numbers and sort of wanted me to justify why they would come on my show, which I understand. I totally understand. And I did get them. But before I actually interviewed this person, I ended up listening to their show. And because I wanted to know more, I wanted to know what the connection was. I wanted to know like how to make this the best interview ever. And what I realized is I didn't like them. I couldn't listen to the show. It was hard for me to listen. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe that's just because of the topics. I don't know. I mean, my people listen to that person and me, so there has to be some kind of connection, right? Well, then I invited them on the show. We had the conversation. And again, actually, my intention was that person would like me, and then they would invite me on their show. And then I would grow my show because I'd be exposed to their audience. That is not a pure intention. It sounds good from a business standpoint, but I have learned over the years, and it proves itself over and over again, is that when my intention's not pure, when I do something because I want something in return, which is definitely, when I'm not connected to it, it's out of integrity with who I am. It's not pure. It's not in alignment. I get my hand slapped or it doesn't work out. Well, this person and I had this conversation and I hated them. And I was like, I am not airing this, and I've never aired it, and I never will. And it was my lesson in prostitution. Again, I was like, okay, this is a prostitute situation because you're thinking you're going to get exposure to more people by having them on the show. And I was so sick to my stomach, literally sick, because I did this. And I thought, I'm not putting that out there. So again, I learned it in that way. And then so that brought me back to integrity with myself and my ideas and my alignment. And I said, okay, I'm not going to do that again. And I have done it very little since then. And then I did it recently, just a little bit. Like I was excited about a possibility. I was led to believe that the person I was interviewing was going to be interviewing me on their very, very popular channel also. And then when the interview was over, it basically got shut down. Like, no, I don't interview people. And his assistant checked the box that said that they would be interested in interviewing me. And so I was left feeling empty. I was left feeling like I'm giving you a platform. I'm sharing you with my people. And I like you just fine, but I have other people. I'm not that connected. I'm not that attracted. I don't have any reason to promote you to my people because the information you share, while it's great, I can also get other places. So it left me feeling icky. And I thought, God, I did it again. Now, sometimes in business, you have to actually go through a relationship exercise, meet a person, interview them, talk with them, to see if it is a connection. So I didn't do anything wrong because I didn't go after them, but I thought after it was over, I don't like this. I don't like the way that I feel. I don't want, he didn't earn the platform that I have. And even though he's way more popular than me, I don't want to air it because it doesn't feel right for me. And so that prostitute, I guess, action, mentality, the way that you're doing it, what was I trying to get out of it? I was trying to get more exposure. I was trying to build a relationship. I was trying to see if we could work together in the future in different ways. And when I just had to trust my gut, I don't know that I'll air it. And if I do air it, it'll probably be in the Empower You group. That's going to be my default for interviews that either I don't want to air because they don't deserve the reach that I have because there's no relationship. I'm about relationships. I'm about taking this conversation deeper and not just throwing out data at you. I want your life to be meaningful. I want your life to be profitable. I want it to be prosperous in every way. I want you to grow with me. I want you to get value. And I want you to trust, which I know a lot of you do, trust me, which is why I then have this now new level of integrity about who I put on the show and how I present information and where I'm telling you to go and who to work with and why. I don't want to be that person. In fact, I even know a fellow podcaster who is so tired of that, whose business and show is run by sponsors, so much so that they want to stop the show and they have a huge audience, but they don't want to do the show anymore because they're literally working for their sponsors, which is why you don't hear a lot of sponsors anymore on my show. I'll bring on a sponsor who donates or represents or buys a table at my event. I will definitely have sponsors on whose products I use and I want to share with you. I will try to get discount codes for you so that you can buy the products also. But I'm not prostituting myself and my business for money. So that's why when you hear me promote my own stuff, it's because I believe in the stuff that I'm doing And I know the value that people get, and I know the value and life-changing aspects that I see happening. And I'd rather promote my own stuff than to prostitute a product that I may or may not believe in, which is why and I don't know that will change. If I find a product that I really like, I will absolutely allow them to be sponsors. But currently, again, I'm trying to stay in a very high integrity. So let's go back to this prostitute archetype. And I want you to ask yourself, where are you out of integrity? Where do you have stomach pains, neck pains, back pains? Where are you having contrast because you're literally just trying to rearrange the chairs on the deck of the Titanic? Like you're going down, but you're trying to make it the best of the best. I'm going to make the best out of a bad situation. This is where honesty has to be part of your value system, because when you're not truly honest with yourself, then you stay in patterns that make you sick. You stay in patterns that don't help you. You stay in patterns that are a lie to you and others. And if you're not willing to be honest with yourself, okay, we're in this Scorpio full moon and eclipse. If you're not willing to be honest with yourself, then your life is not going to work. You have to drive this bus. You have to be the one who believes in and stands up for and makes choices more than any other person on the planet for your highest and greatest good. So I want you to take out a piece of paper and a pencil, or mentally do this if you're driving or working out. I want you to go, okay, business or work, relationships, maybe self-care, and maybe parenting, and any other aspect of life we're missing, all right? And I just want you in those categories to start asking yourself, where are you not being honest? Where are you making the best of a bad situation that you don't want to be in? And while you may not be ready to change and take a dramatic step towards your freedom or integrity or alignment, as long as you're aware of it, maybe we can start moving closer to it, or it can answer the question of why you have this stress or pains or headaches or migraines or back pain or shoulder pain or stomach issues or any of the physical ailments that come from this self-induced stress of keeping yourself in a cage that you don't like because you've told yourself a story that says, if I leave this, if I follow my passion, if I follow my alignment, if I literally become honest about what I want, I'm somehow going to lose or be at risk, or I'm going to fail, or I'm not going to get the money I need to feel the comfort that I feel in my life. It doesn't have to be that way, but it happens. Somebody that in my past worked 2 jobs and hated both of them, and did them so they could retire. But along the way, between working 2 jobs they hated and retirement, there was a lot of physical ailments, a lot of emotional pain, a lot of drama. And the question becomes, you don't even know you're going to make it to retirement. If you're under a stress bubble of denial, you may not even make it there because you may physically have something that comes up that screams at you, hey, this isn't what you want. And if you're not willing to be honest about it, your body is going to tell you. So where are you out of integrity? So for the last time, I am going to read this because now that you've digested this prostitute card, I just want to reiterate it so that we can really make this front and center. So the prostitute card engages lessons in the sale or negotiation of your integrity or spirit based on fears of physical and material survival or for financial gain. It activates aspects of the unconscious related to seduction and control. Should also be understood as a selling or selling out of talents, ideas, and any other expression of the self. I have one more story about that now that I think about selling out. So back in New York, before I moved to California, and before I understood my power of law of attraction and that it works all the time, I had wanted to move in May because what's coming up for me is my 22nd anniversary of moving to California from New York City on June 15th. And I had worked for a restaurateur. I had a personal training business. I also worked for another company in San Diego. It was a physiotherapy company. I had a lot of different things going on in New York. And when I decided to move, the restaurateur asked me, and he knew it had gone through the grapevine. He had like 9 restaurants. And he said, JJ, what are you doing like for work? And I'm like, well, Steve, I'm pretty busy. I have all these different things I have going on. Why? And he said, well, I'm going to lose Jeff, the manager that trained me, and I really need to replace him. Would you be willing to work for a couple more months? And I said, well, I'm actually moving to California. And he said, well, how about if you stay like an extra couple months? And I was like, no. I already have someone to drive with me. I've rented the U-Haul because I had my cats and I wanted another human to be there to help me with the cats and with the packing and the unpacking and stuff. And so it was my massage therapist in New York who was going to help me. And he's like, oh, I can find you someone to move with. And I was like, no, I don't want just anybody to drive across country with me. Like I want someone I like and that I know. And anyway, we went back and forth. And he basically, before he hung up on me, he said, I'll pay for your move. And he hung the phone up. And I thought, that would be easier because the cats would be able to fly. It wouldn't be a long drive. It would be easier. It would be paid for. And so I did absolutely prostitute myself for that. I negotiated that I would work for what ended up probably being less than 2 months, like an extra 2 months. It might have even been 4 weeks. But I became a manager, a swing manager at this restaurant, and he paid for the move. I mean, I had movers, the plane ticket, the cats on the plane. And then he even said, I'll pay you. So he even said to me before he hung up on me, he said, I'll pay you so well, you won't have to work for the first couple of months in LA. And I kept saying no, because I'm very clear. I won't be bought. When I had one of my book launches, I think it was the Fit to Love book. When I did that book launch, I had hired somebody to help me with sponsorship and NeuroWater. I'm sure you probably all have seen NeuroWater. NeuroWater had just started. And this guy, who was actually kind of a slimy, sleazy kind of guy, I didn't know at the time. I learned that quickly, but he wanted NeuroWater to be a sponsor. And I said, okay, well, what's the sugar source? What's the sweetener? And they wouldn't share what it was. Well, it ended up being sucralose, and sucralose is Splenda. And I wouldn't have it. So I mean, I did have it, but I had the plain water kind. And then like they shared some of it, but I wouldn't really let them be a full-on sponsor. So I got free water, but it wasn't until after that I found out that this was, because they were brand new. I think they didn't even have it listed on the website yet. It wasn't until the NeuroWater got to the actual book launch that I could turn it over and see what the sugar source was. So I ended up I didn't drink any of the fake crap, but I did like their plain water. But it was me not wanting to work with them further because I can't support a company that has toxic sugar substitutes, right? So I am very clear about my integrity in so many areas. And even I still, from time to time, get caught off guard with something that if I'm not coming back to a pure desire, like it has to be in alignment with me, which is why I conduct this show the way that I do. And sometimes, I don't ask everyone to be on the show. I go after specific people, specific work. So I just want you to really sit with this prostitute archetype and ask yourself, where in your life are you prostituting yourself? Where are you prostituting yourself for money, for love, for security, for friendship, for your family, maybe your parents and your extended family, or maybe for your children? Because these things will come back in some way energetically. And how do we change that? How do we trust that? And I guess that would be a good lead in to remind you that it is it's like the middle of May, so maybe there's 2 more weeks. But right now what's happening is the early bird pricing for my October event, which is called Awaken Your Dream Life. And what we're going to do in Awaken Your Dream Life is activate those parts of your brain. So remember I said at the beginning with my story about my dancing, it was literally turning on parts of my brain that I needed. I needed that pleasure center. I needed that balance and surrender and depth and flow that I wasn't getting in my life, which is why I chose to prostitute myself in the way that I did, because it was worth it. It was absolutely worth it. I mean, so I had to spend a little bit of money. So I had to drive him around a little bit. All right, that's fine. It wasn't a big deal. I enjoyed it until I didn't. But we're going to activate parts of your brain that are dormant, that you haven't used. And we don't have to prostitute you to get it there. All you got to do is come to the event. You're not going to be prostituting anything. You're going to be experiencing what it's like to start to balance out your brain and possibilities of things you haven't done before, because you get stuck in patterns of survival and scarcity, and that dominates your neurology, basically. Like your neurological processing is through that lens, through that window, through those points of view. And until you open up other parts of the brain, until you rewire, until you activate. I don't know if I mentioned it here on this show. I probably did, but I had one of the listeners, thank you, Meredith, who sent me an email to thank me for the strengthening intuition course that I have, because she had to process some pretty heavy emotions. She needed to find the emotions first, which is why she used the intuition course. Then she processed it, and she went from having diagnosed MS to curing her MS. Now, she can't get a doctor to say that, but she has no more symptoms. So basically, she did all this emotional processing. But part of the opening up of the brain, the strengthening intuition course, gets you to activate and turn on, again, parts of the brain that you're not using every day in your life, or that you used when you were a child, but you haven't since. And I think one of the things that we all strive for is a sense of euphoria and freedom and playfulness that we had as children, that we don't allow ourselves to have in our daily lives because we don't know how to balance it. We don't know how to make sense of it. We don't know why we need to do it. And that's part of what we're going to be doing at Awaken Your Dream Life. So if this resonates with you, I would definitely recommend that you get your ticket now, because it only goes up in price. I already have a third of the room full, and I would love to see you there. If you've thought about coming to an event in the past, please don't wait. If every time I mention an event every year and you're like, oh yeah, I really want to go, and then you don't, can you please notice that upper limiting pattern? Can you please notice that you're just afraid, and that we're not going to change your life by every time you get afraid of something, or you're fearful, or you've got a scarcity mindset? Like, that will keep you exactly in the pattern that you're in. You don't grow from that. And instead of thinking about it as fear, think about it as excitement about what wants to emerge, what wants to come forth, what wants to be born, what wants to be changed, what wants to be shared into the world, and what parts of you need that. What parts of you are dying literally, possibly literally, for expression, to be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged, to be utilized, to be shared, to be experienced. So Awaken Your Dream Life, jjfulzanes.com/dream life. The link will be in the show notes. I'd love to see you there. I will continue talking about topics that inspire me and others and reflect what's going on for me and well as others, because this is how we grow, to know that we're not alone. We do this. We all do this. It's having it in check. It's having it in balance. It's catching it. It's leveraging it. It's using law of attraction to notice that it's contrast, because that contrast clarifies, oh my God, this is what I'm doing. When I walked away from that interview last week and I felt icky, there was nothing icky. It was fine. He liked me just fine, but he didn't love me. And I didn't need it. I didn't need the show. I didn't need to do it. And I don't know that I'll air it, because I didn't like how I felt. And I have to be clear, and I have to be in integrity with me. And I have to feel good about what I'm doing. And when I do that, then shit works. Okay. That's why you're here, is because at one point I realized that I needed to take this show and I needed to break it into different kinds of shows that would attract different people, but also would speak to what you're looking for. And that intuition came very clearly, and I followed it, and here we are. That is one of the reasons why a lot of you are here and have been for years. So let me just speak one more time too, because I'm thinking of a couple other of you that are out there that I know that I've had conversations with recently. How does it feel if you say, I'm a prostitute? Now, and again, I'm not judging you. We all have this archetype. Every single freaking person has this archetype. But if you were to be honest and say, I'm prostituting myself, how does that feel? And what does it also mean? And what it means is sometimes not sometimes, you probably don't trust that you're enough. And you probably don't trust in your ability, or trust in the support system, or trust, period. And I want to help you get there. And if you've been listening for a while and you've wanted to come to events and you haven't because you make excuses about money or travel, and your life doesn't look too much different, or maybe it's a little different, but you still have some of the same problems you've had for 6 years, this is the time. This is a time to break this pattern. This is a time to take responsibility for how you're prostituting yourself and staying stuck in a pattern that doesn't serve you, and you're not allowing yourself to shine. You're not allowing your expression. And if there's anything we've learned over the last couple of years, is that when you get into a fear-based place, or you get into a fear-based belief system, we decrease our immune system and we allow bad things in. And since people are more aware now more than ever of how many people cross over based on something as simple as a flu and a cold and a sickness, because it activates and aggravates and epigenetically turns on some of the things in your body that otherwise might be dormant, because now you're in a fight and flight, fear-based situation, right? It's very subtle changes that can make huge impacts on your life, your health, and your future. So I really strongly encourage you. And if it's a money thing, there's a 5 payment plan. It's $150 a month for 5 months. Like, it can't get easier than that to help you get there, to commit. And I promise you that when you make that commitment, when you decide that you're worth it, that your life is worth it, that your mental and emotional health is worth it, that your body's worth it, I bet you will start to see shifts and changes, because you will literally be telling the universe that I believe in me. And I want more. And you'll be at a frequency that will automatically start allowing in more, because you'll get excited about honoring yourself in a way that you haven't allowed yourself to do thus far. I hope this moved you in some way, and I hope you're going to buy a ticket to come to the event, because it is a small room, and I know it's not for everybody. But, here I am. I'm in integrity when I share with you the kind of transformation that happens when you care enough about your life and your health and your well-being to invest in it and to get out of your comfort zone. You're not going to make huge changes being in your comfort zone. I know this is easy. Listening to a podcast is easy. It's, convenient. It doesn't cost you anything. It's free. I've been giving you free content for 6 years. So you ask yourself, when is it time to break this pattern of prostitution and reclaim the parts of myself that I don't allow to be shown, and to really learn how to find out what my zone of genius is and to live in that, because, this is not a dress rehearsal. Your life is not a dress rehearsal. So let's get to it. Let's live the life that you want. And I'm here to help for those of you that want it and or need it in several ways. Again, several ways you can get involved and get some help. So please don't be sitting on the sidelines any longer. I hope to see you somewhere soon.